In a recent political discourse, a compelling moment emerged when a prominent congressional representative took a bold stand against remarks that many perceived as exclusionary and deeply out of step with modern societal values. Her critique was not merely a reaction. It was a broader statement against a mindset that aims to define people's worth and capabilities based on outdated and narrow criteria. The focal point of the controversy was a statement suggesting that individuals who don't have children should not be involved in professions that influence children, particularly teaching. This remark was met with immediate backlash, most notably from this representative, who called out the logic as not only flawed, but also fundamentally unjust. She didn't hold back in her response. With clarity and conviction, she dismantled the argument by pointing out the many ways in which people who do not have children still play pivotal roles in shaping young lives. Her rebuttal drew attention to the fact that some of the most dedicated, effective educators are people who may not have biological children of their own. Their passion for teaching, their commitment to students, and their profound impact in classrooms cannot and should not be dismissed based on their parental status. To imply that their contributions are any less valuable simply because they don't have children is to ignore the very essence of what it means to be an educator. One particularly compelling example she highlighted was that of nuns. Throughout history, nuns have served as teachers, caregivers, and moral guides for countless children across generations. These women, bound by religious vows that often preclude marriage and motherhood, have nonetheless devoted their lives to the development and education of the young. Their work has been a cornerstone of academic and spiritual education in communities around the world. To suggest that these women are somehow unfit or less qualified to teach simply because they are childless is to do a profound disservice to their legacy and their lifelong sacrifices. Moreover, her response extended beyond individual examples. It challenged the broader cultural assumption that parenting is the sole path to empathy, understanding, and the ability to guide children. Many people, she pointed out, have deep reservoirs of compassion and insight that don't stem from parenthood, but from lived experiences, education, mentorship, and a genuine desire to uplift others. This includes a vast number of professionals, social workers, counselors, coaches, youth leaders, who influence young people daily with no parental relationship to them. Their value lies not in their personal family structures, but in their ability to connect, inspire, and guide. She also raised the issue of how such a narrow viewpoint fails to acknowledge the diversity of modern families and the various ways people form communities of care. In today's society, many children are raised by relatives, guardians, family friends, or LGBTQ+ parents in non-traditional arrangements. These family units function with the same love, structure, and support as any conventional household. Denigrating or excluding those who don't fit the traditional mold reinforces harmful stereotypes and alienates people who contribute meaningfully to society, especially in roles that influence the next generation. In challenging this notion, the representative also addressed the broader implications of such rhetoric. She made it clear that these types of statements don't just alienate individuals, they set a dangerous precedent for policy and public perception. When society begins to associate personal worth or professional capability with parental status, it starts to erode the foundational values of equality and opportunity. People begin to feel they must fit a specific mold to be deemed worthy of certain roles or respect. That kind of thinking fosters division and undermines the collective progress society strives for. What stood out in her response was not only the content of her argument, but also the way she delivered it. Her tone was direct but composed, passionate yet rooted in facts. She didn't simply counter an offensive remark, she transformed it into a teachable moment. By invoking historical context, drawing on lived realities, and emphasizing inclusivity, she reminded the public that leadership and contribution are not defined by parental status. Instead, they are defined by action, character, and commitment to others. Her intervention resonated because it reflected what many already know, but often go unacknowledged, that people from all walks of life, with or without children, are capable of profound influence, compassion, and leadership. It was a reminder that exclusionary narratives must be challenged at every level, not only for the sake of fairness, but for the sake of truth. During a high-stakes diplomatic engagement, tensions flared in a way that caught the attention of many observers around the world. What was expected to be a meeting rooted in strategic dialogue and mutual respect instead devolved into an episode of hostility and unnecessary aggression. At the center of the incident was a troubling display of behavior directed at a foreign leader who had come to the United States in hopes of reaffirming international support for his embattled nation. Rather than being met with understanding and cooperation, he was treated to a barrage of criticism and dismissiveness that left many stunned, both in the room and beyond. In response to this deeply uncomfortable episode, a prominent U.S. representative took to public platforms to voice what many were thinking, but perhaps hesitant to say outright. She issued a powerful statement in which she extended an apology, not on behalf of the administration, but on behalf of the American people. Her words carried both weight and sincerity as she acknowledged the poor conduct displayed during the meeting, characterizing it as un-American and wholly unrepresentative of the values this country purports to uphold. This wasn't merely a symbolic gesture. It was a calculated and courageous act aimed at preserving America's standing in the world and reinforcing the notion that the nation's leaders must model dignity, civility, and moral clarity. Her statement served to distance the broader American public and its democratic institutions from the actions of individuals whose conduct undermined diplomatic norms and the country's international credibility. By choosing to apologize publicly, she reinforced the idea that leadership includes accountability, even when one is not personally at fault. What made her response especially significant was the context in which it occurred. The foreign leader, at the receiving end of the hostility, is leading a nation under siege, fighting not only for territorial integrity but for democratic values shared by many around the world. He came seeking solidarity, not scorn. The treatment he received was therefore not just diplomatically inappropriate, it was a moral failure. Instead of acknowledging the sacrifices and resilience of his people, the tone of the meeting cast aspersions on his motives and questioned the validity of his nation's struggle. It was an affront to global solidarity efforts and a sharp departure from traditional U.S. foreign policy, which has historically valued alliances and supported democracies under threat. In her remarks, the representative was unequivocal. She condemned the bullying tone and the overt lack of decorum that characterized the exchange. She emphasized that disagreements over policy are natural in any democracy, but what took place was not a debate. It was an attempt to belittle and dominate someone who had come in good faith. She highlighted how such behavior not only embarrasses the country on the world stage, but also sets a damaging precedent for future interactions with allies. Her response also carried a deeper message about the state of American political discourse. In a time when polarization often takes precedence over principle, she modeled what integrity and empathy in leadership should look like. She chose not to remain silent in the face of misconduct. Instead, she stepped forward, using her voice, to reaffirm that dignity and decency are still alive in public service. Her actions reminded the public that one can be patriotic while still being critical of behavior that falls short of national ideals. Additionally, her stance had ripple effects. It resonated with citizens who are tired of seeing hostility replace diplomacy and who long for leaders who can act with both strength and compassion. It offered reassurance that not all public figures condone or replicate the worst tendencies of others. For many, her words were a necessary corrective, a recalibration of national identity in a moment of moral drift. International observers took note as well. In issuing a sincere apology, she helped mend some of the frayed edges in the relationship between the United States and the visiting nation. She reminded global allies that there are still figures within the U.S. government who value respectful dialogue and understand the importance of strategic partnerships grounded in mutual respect. What emerged from her intervention was more than just a critique. It was an act of restoration. It reclaimed the dignity of the office she holds and reasserted a commitment to global leadership rooted in ethics. By standing up in a difficult moment, she underscored the importance of calling out unacceptable behavior, even when it comes from within. Through her words and actions, she demonstrated that real leadership isn't about power plays. It's about character, courage, A rising figure in modern politics has become a vocal advocate for a shift in the Democratic Party's approach to leadership, messaging, and identity. She has repeatedly emphasized the urgency of transitioning from traditional modes of operation to a more dynamic, unapologetic, and people-centered movement. In her view, the party must embrace a new generation of leaders, individuals who reflect the diversity, energy, and realities of everyday Americans, rather than continue relying on the comfort of legacy figures and outdated playbooks. Her message is clear. The political landscape has changed, and the Democratic Party must change with it. In an era defined by rapid cultural, economic, and technological shifts, old strategies no longer resonate with broad swaths of the electorate. The party must begin to speak with greater clarity and conviction about what it stands for, rather than constantly responding to its opposition's narrative. She challenges the instinct to play it safe or avoid offense, urging her colleagues to stop ceding moral high ground in debates that directly impact people's lives. One of her most pointed criticisms is directed at the tendency to use vague or watered-down language when addressing issues of justice, equity, and freedom. She argues that this kind of rhetoric doesn't inspire confidence or trust. It alienates people who are looking for leaders to reflect their urgency, their struggles, and their vision for a better future. Whether it's reproductive rights, economic inequality, police accountability, or voting access, she believes the party should communicate boldly, taking positions rooted in principle rather than political expediency. Her passion is grounded in experience. As someone who has navigated adversity and fought her way into political spaces that weren't built with her in mind, she speaks not from theory, but from lived reality. She understands the frustration felt by younger generations who are watching their futures erode while witnessing performative gestures in place of concrete action. She's quick to point out that it's not enough to talk about change. Leaders must embody it. That means elevating voices that have too long been on the margins and empowering people who challenge the status quo rather than defend it. Her advocacy is not divisive. It is a call to courage. She is urging the party to remember its roots in activism and progress. The Democratic tradition, at its best, has been about pushing boundaries, fighting for civil rights, workers' protections, women's equality, and more. But somewhere along the way, she argues, the party began to retreat into caution, particularly in the face of rising political extremism. This retreat has left many voters disillusioned, especially those who feel that their communities are under constant attack and cannot afford half measures or ambiguous statements. In her vision for the party, elected officials should not only be policy experts but also communicators capable of inspiring collective action. They must meet people where they are, on social media, in barbershops, on campuses, in union halls, and speak in a language that makes sense to them. This means moving away from academic jargon and instead speaking plainly about how policies will help people pay rent, protect their rights, access healthcare, and secure their futures. It means calling out injustice in real time and refusing to normalize behavior that undermines democracy. She also emphasizes that the face of leadership needs to reflect the nation itself. Young people, people of color, women, LGBTQ+ individuals, working-class Americans. These groups are not peripheral to the political process. They are the backbone of the party's electoral success. To ignore their leadership potential is to squander the party's greatest strength. She's called for mentorship pipelines, more funding for insurgent campaigns, and a redistribution of institutional power that makes space for fresh perspectives. What sets her apart is not only what she says, but how she lives it. She engages her constituents directly, listens actively, and brings their stories into legislative chambers where they are too often absent. She is not content to wait her turn or follow a script. She's rewriting the script entirely, encouraging others to do the same and proving that bold, values-driven politics can still win. In doing so, she is planting seeds for a more responsive and inclusive political movement, one that can withstand the storms of division and misinformation because it is grounded in truth, justice, and the belief that government should serve all, not just the privileged few. When a national political campaign is gearing up for a fiercely contested election cycle, the selection of its leadership team speaks volumes about its priorities and vision. In this context, the appointment of a rising congressional representative as a national co-chair of a major presidential campaign was not just a strategic move, it was a powerful statement. Her elevation to this prominent role signaled a deliberate pivot toward a more energized, grassroots-oriented, and bold approach to connecting with voters, especially among communities that have historically felt overlooked or taken for granted by the political establishment. Her presence on the campaign's leadership team represents more than a name on a roster. It brings with it a deep understanding of the lived experiences of working-class Americans, people of color, young voters, and other key constituencies that are often at the center of policy debates but underrepresented in decision-making rooms. She brings authenticity, relatability, and a fearless communication style that resonates in town halls, media interviews, and social platforms alike. These qualities are not just helpful, they are necessary in a political climate where trust in institutions is fragile and authenticity is a currency. Her rise in the political ranks has been fueled by a commitment to speaking plainly about injustice and advocating for transformative change. She has consistently centered her work around issues such as voting rights, reproductive freedom, criminal justice reform, and economic equity. These are not abstract topics to her. They are urgent battles that she has taken on with unwavering focus. That passion and clarity are exactly what the campaign needs as it seeks to rally a diverse coalition and mobilize voters in a high-stakes election. This leadership role also illustrates the campaign's recognition of the need for new faces and perspectives to take on more prominent positions. While many campaigns in the past have leaned heavily on traditional figures with long tenures, this decision reflects an understanding that fresh energy and lived experience are invaluable assets. It acknowledges the political and cultural moment, a time when younger generations are demanding not just to be heard, but to be at the table where decisions are made. She has shown an ability to connect across generations, particularly with Gen Z and millennials, who are deeply concerned about the direction of the country and increasingly skeptical of conventional politics. Her ability to frame policies around people's everyday struggles, rent, student loans, healthcare, climate change, and civil rights, helps bridge the gap between government and the people it serves. She speaks to these issues with both urgency and optimism, making her an effective messenger for a campaign that must not only defend its record, but also present a bold, hopeful vision for the future. As national co-chair, she plays a vital role in shaping campaign strategy, messaging, and outreach. She is not there to merely validate talking points, she helps define them. Her input helps ensure that the campaign doesn't shy away from hard conversations or controversial issues, but instead confronts them head-on with clarity and purpose. Her influence helps the campaign reflect the priorities of those most impacted by policy decisions rather than those most insulated from them. Her leadership also carries symbolic weight. For countless young women, particularly women of color, seeing someone who looks like them in such a powerful role can be deeply empowering. It sends a message that political leadership is not reserved for a select few, but is accessible to those with vision, courage, and dedication. Her ascent challenges long-held assumptions about who belongs in high-level politics and inspires a new generation to engage in the democratic process not as bystanders, but as leaders. Beyond the symbolic, she brings strategic strength. She understands the mechanics of organizing, the importance of grassroots momentum, and the need for targeted engagement in key battleground regions. She knows how to connect with voters who feel disillusioned or disenchanted and reframe political participation as a tool for liberation and progress. Her campaign presence is not performative. It's purposeful, rooted in mobilization, coalition building, and justice. In stepping into this leadership role, she brings the clarity, tenacity, and authenticity that modern political campaigns desperately need. Her involvement reflects a commitment to broadening the political tent and ensuring that the voices of the people, especially those most often silenced or ignored, are central to the campaign's direction. As the political landscape shifts and the stakes of national leadership intensify, the emergence of bold, principled figures has never been more crucial. What makes the representative in question stand out is not simply her position or title, but the integrity and courage with which she wields her platform. In an era dominated by sound bites, partisanship, and performative outrage, she brings a refreshing clarity, one rooted in values, lived experience, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Her readiness to confront controversial statements and actions, whether on matters of education, diplomacy, or party identity, reflects a broader philosophy that leadership must be accountable, inclusive, and future-oriented. She doesn't shy away from hard conversations. Instead, she leans into them with confidence, using them as opportunities to educate, mobilize, and inspire. Each time she speaks out, whether challenging exclusionary narratives or standing up for global allies, she does so not out of political convenience, but from a place of genuine conviction. Her rise to national campaign co-chair further solidifies her as more than just a rising star. She is actively shaping the future of the political movement she represents. In this role, she's not merely endorsing a campaign's message, she's influencing its tone, its direction, and its priorities. Her presence signals that the campaign sees value not just in experience, but in perspective. Not just in status, but in impact. It marks a critical acknowledgement that the path to winning elections is paved not only through conventional strategies, but through honest conversations and authentic connections. What makes her leadership particularly resonant is her consistent alignment with the communities she serves. She carries their concerns into every room she enters and reminds decision-makers that policy is not about abstractions, it is about people's lives. Whether it's defending teachers from unwarranted scrutiny, standing up for democratic allies, on the global stage, or calling for generational change within her own party, she centers her work on those who are often pushed to the margins, and by doing so, she expands what political leadership looks and sounds like. The impact of her approach extends beyond policy or politics. It is cultural. It challenges the notion that change must be incremental, or that power must always be inherited rather than earned. It invites others to imagine leadership as something that is both accessible and accountable, a form of public service rooted not in ambition, but in community. Her voice, her example, and her vision collectively offer a roadmap for how to move forward, boldly, compassionately, and without compromise. As the nation approaches yet another pivotal election, figures like her provide hope that politics can still be a vehicle for progress. That integrity still matters, that it's possible to lead with both fire and grace, and that when given the chance, new voices can not only join the conversation, but completely transform